I don't know why I said it like that. What was it, Elena, the other day? Your nephew was watching one of my TikToks. I don't know why I said it like that. What was it, Elena, the other day? Your nephew was watching one of my TikToks, and I said, that's going to be a problem. Huge, huge, huge. And then he was just watching one of my TikToks, and I said, that's going to be a problem. Huge, huge, huge. And then he was just... Cindy said he was looking around like if I was in the car, and he kept rewinding it and playing it. Huge.
Yes.
That's a good word, huge. Yeah. I'm very big on that when you're talking to include people's names. It gives you a good touch point. And then when you're trying to not say somebody's name, it just slips out. All right, we are ready, kids.
Okay, question number 1. Does the IEP caseworker need to be notified if someone calls CPS for a child on a BIP?
No, I mean, if somebody calls CPS, somebody calls CPS. Do you mean does the caseworker need to be called if one of the school-based members? No, when you call Child Protective Services, it's anonymous. So if I was at Target, if I was at church, if I was at the park, if I was at school and I saw something, I think ethically as adults we should be doing that anyway. But I have had, clients people have called CPS on them. I have had CPS called on me when I was a parent with a young child with a disability. I want to assume people are doing it for good reasons. Yeah, no requirement to notify anybody.
Okay. Does my child who has an IEP have to pass the STAR test to graduate from high school?
Ugh, stupid states test. Stupid state test. So it's all propaganda. If the truth was you had to pass all of these state tests to graduate, we would have a parking lot full of 40-year-olds. So we tell people that, don't we? We tell them that from kindergarten on. And guess what happens every year? Everybody graduates. So I'm going to have to call bologna sauce on that. But yes, it's touted around. But that's not my experience doing this for 28 years. There are general ed students who don't pass, special ed students, 504 students.
Okay. I just had an ARD for my first grader. Teachers admitted she's not implementing the IEP plan. What can I do?
Oh my goodness. So I would say, we can't go backwards. We can only go forwards. When can I expect the IEP to be implemented with fidelity? And then if that doesn't occur, then I would file a phenomenal state complaint or get somebody that can. So that is something that we do for our clients. We file state and federal complaints.
Okay.
Oh, Washington, North Carolina. I know where that is.
Yes. And why do you know that?
Because I was forced to stand in front of an easement and do a press conference. We have a press conference this Friday if you're in Central Texas. This Friday, September 20th at 5 p.m. I will be in Manor ISD, Manor Independent School District, because they can't get it together. So we would love for you to join us while we help them get it together.
Okay. The school is losing a teacher for 14 self-contained kids. Admin said to put all the kids on Homebound. Can they do that?
What? This is what I think I have, like, why don't we just, what? Why don't we just put them on a cruise? Let's do that, Elena. Let's just put them on a cruise. They can stay on the cruise. Thanks, you guys, for the gifts. No, we don't put somebody on Homebound because you have a staffing issue. Homebound is solely for children who have first been recommended by a physician because it's not appropriate for them to have their education in a school building. Like, what? What are we talking about? No. Staff the room.
What happens when the school is overdue on the triennial?
No, I can guess what school district you're in. Then they're out of compliance. So, again, I always say we can't go backwards. The school is out of compliance in this area. When can we expect for you to be in compliance and implement my son's or daughter's IEP with fidelity? And then based upon their answer determines my next steps.
Okay. Can you have a specific person person not attend an IEP meeting, the principal at our school is very combative and rude.
Wouldn't that be great? So when people are combative and rude, it's because they are unable to do the job they were hired to do. That really it is. The reason that you're yelling or being rude is, for one thing, to distract. So I would say when you behave like that, it's very distracting, and it impedes my client's ability to participate and understand what's going on. We probably need to reschedule until a time that's better for you and you're not so upset. So I just turn that back around. If it continues, then I would reach out to the district level and say, at our next meeting, you know, Sally Smith really struggled to be an appropriate and partnering IEP member. Could somebody else serve in her role? I certainly can't ask for that person not to be in the meeting. But if somebody's going to be rude, then you're just going to derail the meeting and none of us can participate successfully.
Okay, very well. All right. Now, this is a question from a school-based SLP. She wants to know how to disagree with a private SLP about dismissing a student that has limited skills.
The school-based SLP wants to not dismiss? Well, the school-based members, that's where the child is receiving services. And so you would just say, I respectfully disagree with the outside evaluators' data, summary, and conclusion. And I believe that it's meaningful and purposeful for him to continue with speech and language services currently.
Okay. Explain the 10 days out of placement. The school system says it's only if the school puts them out.
Well, yeah, parents don't put a child out of school. So the 10 days is when there is a disciplinary action, and then that meets your threshold for needing to have an MDR, manifestation determination resolution meeting, to ask the committee and all members, do we believe this action was a causation and directly linked to his disability?
What is meant by redirect on an IEP? Do you redirect a child who got a wrong answer on a test?
I think redirect is just helping a child attend to the directive or the task, right? If I ask you to line up, I ask you to put stuff in your cubby, if I ask you to get your pencil out, but no, I'm not redirecting you to a part of content in an area that I'm testing you.
Okay. What if my son had a 504 and he tends to leave school, stores, or doctor's offices if it's too loud? Is that okay?
I don't know how those two are connected when you said he tends to leave. So in a 504, we can certainly write accommodations to talk about the level of, behavioral support he needs. But if that in fact is a current need of his, he probably needs an IEP, need a psychological evaluation with a functional behavior assessment, and then give birth to a BIP, a behavior intervention plan.
I had someone in the meeting tell me that IDEA does not exist. What would you tell them?
I would say then you should probably call the federal government and let them know they can burn these in the back of the building, since IDEA doesn't exist. It's a federal authorization. It's not a suggestion. Wonder what state they were in. Wonder if it starts with the letter I. Did I say that? Yeah. It doesn't exist. It feels like sometimes as parents and advocates it doesn't exist. So we agree with the feeling, but we don't agree with the facts.
Okay. Hi, I have a student from out of state with an IEP. His IEP says Gen Ed, but it's not helping him. What do I do?
So then the placement's not correct, right? So it's about, is he making progress in that setting? And so we're always looking at that, right? An IEP is our best informed guess, and sometimes our guess is wrong. So we believed before when we signed this in the conformity of the IEP that this would be his appropriate setting. Looking at his performance right now doesn't quantify that decision. So we need to have a review IEP meeting and look at the more appropriate setting for him. I mean, that happens. They're kids.
Okay. Is there a planning period for SPED services, or should my child have been receiving services since day one?
Day one. They got money day one. Yeah.
My daughter is in vet school, and they give her a lot of trouble for her accommodations. What can I do?
She's in vet school, so I assume that she's in college. So then I would go to the admissions office, wherever the disability office is, and tell them your concerns.
I have a student that throws fits when I pull him. What should I do if I can't give him his minutes because of this?
Well, so it's not that you can't give him his minutes. So if he has behavioral needs that arise when he's transitioning and you're trying to implement special education, we need to address that. So we don't stop giving him his minutes. We address the behavior. We're looking at an educational need. So behaviors, emotions, sociological, emotional, behavioral, functional, academic, all of those things are an educational need at school.
I have a student with a 504 as he has Tourette's, but I don't have any accommodations. What do I do?
You have what again?
He has a 504 with Tourette's,
Mm-hmm.
but he doesn't have any accommodations.
Well, if you don't have any accommodations, you don't have a 504. So the 504 plan is that you can have accommodations. So I'm not really sure what the plan would be then.
Do you have to have an IEP before a BIP?
There are some states, and it's certainly up to the district, that you can have a behavior plan on a 504. Of course, for me, if you have a behavior plan, you need teaching around that.
Okay. I need a 504 plan for my daughter for anxiety and ADHD, but the psychologist is telling me no, just to focus on the anxiety. What do I do?
I would say the psychologist is telling you that, but your doctor telling you something different. I'm going to defer to my physician. Yeah.
When would Handoverand be used? Can it be used with force?
Oh, with force. No, it's not called hand over hand. So hand over hand is to help guide a student when we're learning a skill. So I had a kiddo today. His occupational therapist is using hand over hand to help him make gains in tracing. We don't use hand over hand for people that are visually impaired. We don't do that. So you just want to quantify how it's being used, what's the need for it, and when are you going to fade it.
Okay. I have a child who is really struggling in 3rd grade. She's leaving class when she gets really upset. How can I get her the help she needs quickly?
I don't know about getting the help she needs quickly, but we can get her the help she needs. Again, you're going to need to do a functional behavioral assessment. So what is the function of that behavior? So you would ask for a psychologist, a social worker, an LSSP, whoever that is in your district. Depending where you are in the United States, it might be under psychological, it might be under social emotional. You want them to do the evaluation with fidelity. A burger and fries we can rush. Doing assessments for children we don't.
Does a student need to be on a modified curriculum before they move to a resource classroom?
No. We can decide today that the student needs to modify, and we can decide today that the appropriate place for that modification is outside of a general ed setting. Remember, we're looking at two things: meaningful benefit and harmful effect. They both exist whether you ever leave the class or not. So is there meaningful benefit in Billy sitting in a 7th grade social studies class, listening to grade level content, who reads at a 3rd grade level? I would say no, right? Because the modification is so far from the grade level expectation. But you have to have those conversations with the IEP committee.
Okay. What are the first steps in becoming an advocate? I've been in special education for 5 years now.
So we would love for you to be an advocate. We have an amazing 2-day training at specialeducationacademy.com. The 2-day intensive really is what you need to go out there and be an advocate. Even if you're still in the school, but certainly to pivot and do that for a vocation. And then after that, we have a mastermind.
Do you have any tip for educators who really want to work with parents and advocate in a collaborative way versus a combative way?
Yeah, well, I don't know anybody that wants to work in a combative way. So, you know, I just did a training for schools and teachers. We do professional development. I think the biggest gap from schools to parents is that there's no pre-conversation, right? We just get into a meeting, we email you over a document. I don't know why schools do not pick up the phone and call parents ahead of time for 5 minutes. It could be a 5-minute phone call. Hey, Mrs. Thomas, anything going on with Billy that we should know about? Any new changes at home? Has he made the gains that you wanted? How can we have your input in the document? Easy peasy, but we don't do that. We send people drafts after we beg for a draft, right? I got a draft last night, and the plaf was, say it with me, blank. Blank. So at 11 today, they send me the document. I can't prepare. We're educating a child for a year. I need to be able to prepare for the meeting, and schools don't very often give the parents an opportunity to prepare. If I prepare, then I'm able to go through the components, and that's collaborative, right? So that's the piece that we're missing. We're missing that good business model inside of a school system. And I know some of you guys are going to say in the comments, we do that. We don't, love. I sit in 500 IEP meetings, and I have for almost 3 decades. We don't do that. And when I ask for a draft, they give us a couple of sheets of paper. So you can spend 5 minutes on the front end to make an hour and a half IEP meeting smooth and seamless.
Should paras be covering aid duties at the expense of SPED minutes?
Nope.
Okay. I have a question for help with my daughter. Where can I send it? The TikTok comments are not long enough.
So you're welcome to shoot us an email. We're not always able to get to every single email. We have almost 750,000 followers across platforms, and we love that. We do our very best to get to all of them. But if you need representation or you have a question that you want us to get to, it's advocate@specialeducationacademy.com. And so I know the TikTokers don't let you write as many comments as you want. If you want to ask questions, what you should do is join the Academy. So you can go to specialeducationacademy.com, go to trainings and join the Academy. You put in your credit card information. We train for about 6 hours a month. Every Tuesday night, it goes over an hour on the federal law, and we answer your questions there. And so, you know, a lot of times when there's questions on the clicker that's going by, when we do a TikTok live, there'll be about 7,000 people that come in and out of the live. So we are certainly doing our best, but we're just one person. I'm just one person, and then my amazing moderators that help us. But yeah, that's certainly a way to get your questions answered, is to join the Academy. And then just FYI, the Academy is $47 a month. It's going up October 1st. So if you want to lock in that price at $47 a month for a lifetime, go ahead and get that Academy membership signed up before the end of September, because it will go up October 1st.
In New Jersey, a school district refused my daughter because they could not meet her IEP. Now what do I do?
Wait, you don't get to refuse children, so where are they going to place her? So if you're zoned to a school district, they are required to educate your student. So are they going to educate her at home? Are they going to educate her in private placement? But there's no such thing as refusing children in America.
Can I get an IEP without dysgraphia because I have bad handwriting and dyslexia?
Can you get an IEP for dysgraphia or without dysgraphia?
Without it.
Well, I don't know about, so we write the IEP for whatever the needs are. We don't take out a need if you don't want it. If there's no deficit in the area of dysgraphia, we wouldn't provide instruction around that. But certainly the IEP is found eligible for a student after we do an FIIE, full initial individualized evaluation. We just did a series on YouTube, Special Education Academy on YouTube, of all 8 areas of testing that you need.
Okay. My son's principal is insisting that all communication go through her and not his teacher. Is that legal?
Yep. I don't like it, but it's legal. It's kind of silly. Why would I be asking the principal questions? A lot of times when we are in school settings and we're calling them on we have to address the fact they're not implementing the IEP. All of a sudden, the director steps in or the head of curriculum and they answer questions for students. It's very obvious what they're doing. If you're an adult and you work in a school, the parent should be able to ask the teacher in an appropriate way what's going on with my kiddo. I find it odd that a principal starts to answer questions. I was at a meeting a few weeks ago and this principal started talking. I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, tell me who you are." And I really, because there's so many people on the Zoom or the Teams. And she said, "I'm Sally Sizzle." And I said, "Oh," and I said, "What do you teach the student?" "I don't." I said, "And tell me about the curriculum that you teach her." "I don't." Okay, I was asking the self-contained teacher about the student in her class, so I'm not really sure how you could add to that answer. And that's just the truth. I don't know why the principal, the assistant principal, is jumping in when I ask the teacher something about a self-contained setting. I do know why she's doing that. She's doing that to cover for her. So, parents are not unaware of what's going on. If the parent asks the teacher a question, just let her answer.
My 4-year-old child is asking me to tell his teachers to let him play outside with his classmates. How do I go about this situation?
So you play outside when you go to school, probably when they're that little, a couple times a day. Do you think your 4-year-old's being held back from recess? What is going on?
Sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay. Can a student keep a 504 or an IEP just for social work services?
Somebody for social work services. So if the student's minutes are solely around social work, that's a related service under IDEA. Yeah.
My kinder son has an emotional regulation behaviors in the gen ed. Art is coming up. What should I be asking for?
So, you would want to make sure that you're asking all the right questions, starting with, what does that look like across settings? What are his needs? Does he have needs in core classes? Does he have needs in transition? Does he have needs at lunch? Does he have needs at recess? Does he need certain core classes but not the others? So make sure that you find out what's going on from the time he hits that school campus until he leaves.
I am currently taking a SPED class and I have a question. What is the difference between a disability and a handicap?
So we don't use the word handicapped anymore, so as it relates to IDEA. So in 1975, in December 2nd, 1975, Gerald Ford signed into an act, the Educating All Handicapped Children Act. And then that changed into IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act in 1990.
As a teacher, what do I do if an advocate just follows what the parent wants to make them happy versus what is doing best for the child?
Well, I don't go along with anybody that's doing what somebody wants. It's not about what somebody wants, it's about what's right for a student.
Do you have to call a reevaluation before you can begin an AAC device trial with a child?
You have to provide notice and consent. You have to sign. Yeah, you have to sign notice and consent that you're going to be testing. Sure.
All right. Hold on. How do I get social skills added to my child's IEP? He has autism. He also did not have an OT eval.
So if you didn't have an OT eval, request an occupational therapy eval, either in fine motor, in sensory, or both. If you think he needs social skills, that needs to be quantified in the present levels. There's a deficit in social skills. You would want to know when that curriculum is taught. Sometimes it's once a week. Sometimes it's a few minutes a day.
Can students be tested out of gifted services?
So any service is when there's no longer a need.
The district has no speech path available for my son's NPSP. Is he still entitled to comp service?
Yeah, so you're entitled to have the minutes delivered to your child. So when you deny the minutes, then there's compensatory time. That is to return the student back to where they would have been had the violation not occurred.
Charter schools required to provide an IEP if it is needed.
So charter schools are public schools, so they absolutely fall under the same regulations of public schools.
Kids in my classroom are always pulled during writing. I can't give them any writing grades because they keep missing instruction. What do I do?
Are they being pulled for language arts? So if they're being pulled for special ed language arts minutes, then that special educator would provide that instruction in a special ed setting.
My child started high school and her IEP has a reading program at school, but now they're saying they don't offer it. What do I do?
So an IEP would indicate minutes that you need, not necessarily a reading curriculum. So if we agreed in the IEP document that they need reading special education, then we deliver that.
Okay. What impact or influence does a doctor's recommendation in writing have on IEPs or 504s?
I mean, it depends on what the recommendation is, right? So if the recommendation is that they have, a butler, a handmaiden, and, a bunch of sprinkled cupcakes, not much. If the doctor says they need homebound, then that's a directive that the committee has to take into recommendations. But we don't take a lot of doctors' recommendations to put in an IEP, and the reason is there's 3 different settings, right? There's a medical model, a therapeutic model, and an educational model, and they're very different. I love doctors, but they have a tendency to over-recommend stuff that wouldn't be appropriate necessarily to be delivered the entire instructional day.
Can a student be both ID and dyslexic?
A student could not meet the eligibility criteria for dyslexia and intellectual disability because there are not deviations from the norm. So when you have a specific learning disability, whether it's dyslexia, basic reading, reading fluency, reading comprehension, or any of the others, there's a deviation, right? There's an unexpected occurrence. And so when you have a child that meets criteria for an intellectual disability, they are usually have global deficits across the cognitive areas and commensurate in achievement. And their cognition is usually 2 deviations from the norm, putting them around the 0 to 1 or 2 percentile. When you're looking at a specific learning disability, your cognition is in the normed and average range. And then there are places that are not in the average range. So that's the unexpected part.
Okay. Are schools required to do an FBA if it is indicated that the child is having behavioral issues?
No. The FBA is needed if, in fact, the staff and the teachers cannot educate him with what the processes they use in a classroom. So a lot of kids have behavioral goals, behavioral accommodations, but the teachers are able to address those while still being the general ed teacher.
And over to Cindy.
How do I get social skills added to my child's IEP?
We just did. We just did that.
We just did. Okay, just checking to see if you were paying attention.
Yeah.
Okay. Does a parent need to submit a written request for an evaluation, or can it just be verbal?
Verbal's not legal. And the reason you want to submit it in writing is so that we're really clear, right? I just sent my husband to get Chinese food. I hope he got what I said, but I didn't write it down, so I'm going to get what I get.
And you don't throw a fit.
No, I do. I do throw a fit. I do. Not with you fine people, but, you know, get the egg drop soup wrong, we're going to have a conversation about it.
Most definitely. My son was placed in Gen Ed this year. He's in kindergarten, but it seems the expectation they have are unrealistic. What do you think I should do?
Well, I mean, you'd have to quantify what is unrealistic, right? Is he able to keep up with the expectations? Does he need support? Ask the teacher. And it might seem unrealistic to us, right? When I went to kindergarten, I think we just licked the floor and, you know, I don't know, had little wars on the playground. I don't remember us doing a lot of the stuff that they do now, right? Now we want kindergartners to take a composition notebook and journal. Like, what are we doing? Like, what? I know that we were not journaling in kindergarten. And so you would ask the teacher, hey, this seems like a lot. How's my kiddo doing? And she might say, he's crushing it. Super. Am I going to have homework in kindergarten? I'm not. As my great friend Myron Golden said, we don't have homework. That's what you need to do at work. So, I mean, I'm not a fan of homework for little tiny kiddos. So, yeah, just ask the teacher, are these normal expectations? Is my child crushing it? Do we need to have a conversation about getting him more support, or is he doing just fine?
Okay. What do I do when a SPED teacher is not teaching the class?
Is it a SPED class? I would just get a megaphone and go, what's going on in there? No, I wouldn't do that. I would ask the principal, do you know when you're going to properly staff the SPED classroom? And then based on their answer, we go from there. We always say it with me, always give the school a chance to get it together. Do they always get it together? They do not. But mostly when you give them a chance to get it together, they are thankful for the opportunity and they just didn't know about it. And they get it together. Isn't that right, girls? They just didn't know.
That is right.
Thanks for bringing that to our attention. We had no idea that there was a piece of furniture blocking the door. That's for next week. I'll tell you about that.
How big was that furniture?
It was a pew.
I have twin.
Yeah.
It was. I have twin sons and need help navigating their IEPs. Help.
Yeah, just shoot us an email. We have a team of advocates. Shoot us an email to advocate@specialeducationacademy.com.
Fantastic. What do I say when the SPED teacher says no to accommodations that go against the student code of conduct?
I don't know. I don't even know what that means. The student.
Nor do I.
Yeah, I don't. What accommodation? The accommodation is to help a child be successful. So I'm sure the accommodation is not, you know, you can have a glass of beer during reading. So I don't know what she's talking about.
Maybe they will.
Maybe we should add that for the advocates. We'll have a pint of beer before we start this meeting.
It would definitely lower blood pressures. During my child's parent-teacher conference, the teacher put my verbal request for testing in the conference form. All conference forms are turned into the principal. Does that start the paper trail?
So whenever you put in a request by an email, that starts a timeline. I wouldn't call it a paper trail, but it starts a timeline for sure.
Excellent.
We do love a good paper trail, though. Sorry.
For kids with IEPs who've had it stated that they are to be tested in small groups, they used to be pull-out. Now, admin says they must be tested within the classroom. Is that legal?
I mean, I would make mine clean, right? We want the accommodations to have no assumption. So if that in fact is the rub, then I would go back to the table and say, my child has out of class small group testing. I'm not going to argue over that. Are there some amazing teachers that have a ginormous room and I can pull them to the back? Yeah, I don't know that that is theoretically small group testing, but I'm usually doing small group testing because I've got to pace it different. I've got to repeat things. I've got to wait for kids. So if I'm talking in the back of the room, I figure that distracts the other kids who are taking their tests. So I would say this. That's what we say in Texas when we disagree. I don't know what y'all say from others. What do y'all say? What do people from New York say? Get me some coffee or I'm going to get a big spoon out of the drawer. Yeah.
Stat. Exactly. We have a gong. Boing.
A gong. Yeah.
A gong. Yes. My daughter's IEP meeting is coming up for her severe anxiety, which limits her ability to attend school. Any advice?
She has an IEP coming up for her anxiety?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean...
severe anxiety.
Yeah, so I mean, I would just continue to look at what is the best place to implement our IEP. Are the services that we have appropriate for her? We have many counseling services, support services, social services, and you know, what can we do to plan correctly for this next 36 instructional weeks?
I am starting to co-teach soon. Can you tell me what the ideal co-teaching classroom would look like? It seems so broad.
It's not broad at all. There are 2 teachers in the classroom from the first minute to the last minute. So the general ed teacher is providing the initial instruction. The certified special ed teacher is there for the totality of the instruction and the production, right? It's not broad at all. And then that special educator, who's the co-teacher, would be responsible for working with the general ed teacher to make sure that we're aligning scaffolding the IEP that's appropriate for that content area.
Hey, question. Does the federal law allow long-term subs in a special needs classroom?
The federal law doesn't talk about subs. It's the weirdest thing. Let me help you guys out. The law, all laws are assumptive. Say it with me. They're assumptive. That means they assume that you know what they meant. And that's why we have judges and juries and decisions that are always different, right? The law is pretty linear. Okay, so the law talks about the kinds of education that we provide students with disabilities, general educators, support staff, related service providers, instructional service providers, special educators, general educators. We talk about LEA representatives, but I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. But we don't talk about long-term subs. If the teacher is to deliver a certain kind of content, then she has to be certified to deliver that.
Okay. What can be done to include in an IEP accommodations or help with my son's social anxiety? What can we add to help him?
Yeah, so I wouldn't add an accommodation, but certainly we can add instruction. Special ed is about instruction. It's about teaching a child strategies to self-manage their disability. So we provide instruction. We deliver that instruction, we measure to see its efficacy, and then we fade it because there's GMF, generalization, maintenance, and fluency.
Fantastic. How can we request sick days for children with disabilities?
So there are kids that are going to be out because they have acute medical needs. I have kiddos that have severe epilepsy. They have horrific diabetes. They are going through cancer treatments. They have muscular dystrophy and they get infusions, but then they have to be out. So there are some days that we know about, but there are kids that are going to be sick during the instructional year. We do our best to plan for that and not to put another load onto the parents. But kids don't have sick days, employees do. So we try to manage the days that they won't be able to participate in school and see ways that we can make up for that.
Fantastic. What's coming up after TikTok?
Hopefully my Chinese food. No, I'm sorry. You want to ask me that? Ask me that question again.
Absolutely. What can we do with you after TikTok?
Well, that's a loaded question, isn't it? So after TikTok at 8 p.m. Central on Tuesdays, we have the Academy, Special Education Academy. We are in the middle of one of my favorite series, Procedural Rights and Safeguards for Parents and the Student with a Disability. So certainly go, if you haven't already joined, you want to join the Academy now because the price goes up October 1st. First time we've ever had a price increase in 3.5 years. So if you would like to keep the price that we've had forever, at first time we've ever had a price increase in 3.5 years. So if you would like to keep the price that we've had forever at $47, go ahead and join now, and then you'll be grandfathered into that. You go to specialeducationacademy.com, go to training, fill out your information with a credit card. There'll be a place that says coupon code, type in TikTok Live. I'm sure one of my amazing people right now will top that in the comments. TikTok Live in all caps. And then after 15 days, if you decide to stay, it'll charge your card $47, and then you will be an Acadian. What are we, Academy? We need like a mascot. We need a Special Education Academy mascot.
Yes.
What would that be? Like, is there like a happy tornado? Is that? Yeah. The silly tsunami. Let's vote on that. Yeah, the silly tsunami.
We should have people send in suggestions.
Yeah, what would be the best Special Education Academy mascot? Go. Yeah. The acronym is C, so the C tsunami. Hopefully it's not coming, but we'll bring it if you need it. Ba-dum-bum. So.
That is spectacular.
That is Can I just say that Cindy has the best word? Spectacular. I think if you had a car wreck, she would go, that's spectacular. Thank you.
Depends who's in the end.
You're the best.
Okay. What can you do for the handicapped students if the school they attend is not handicap accessible?
So so then you would file an amazing complaint with the U.S. Department of Education Office of Civil Rights. We have a training, the best training on Special Education Academy that you can invest in. I probably at any time have 100 OCR complaints open, and they're good. They're really good. I just got, Houston ISD has 180 playgrounds. I just got 11 opened. One was for River Oaks Elementary School, where they filmed Terms of Endearment, the most expensive school district there is. There's an exact way to do it and 100 ways to do it wrong. If you do it wrong, they're going to say, they're going to kick it out. You don't want them to kick it out. You want them to kick it in, right? You want them to be all net. And so it's really important when you're doing a state complaint or a federal complaint that unless you know what you're doing, get somebody to support you. So we can do one of two things. You can either invest in that training, which is online at specialeducationacademy.com. You would have it forever. It's 5.5 hours long. Or you could reach out to us at Advocate at Special Education Academy, and we would write an amazing, pew, that's what we say, pew, OCR complaint for you.
Can resource students be served by a general education teacher?
Resource students?
Resource students.
No. Say it with me. No.
No.
It's not a special education. It's not a general education setting. So because it's not a general ed setting, the general ed teacher doesn't go in there. Now, could the resource teacher reach out to the general ed teacher to make sure that they're aligned, that they're scaffolding it? Because when a child's in a special ed setting, the general ed teacher still supports that special educator in that content area, but they don't deliver the instruction.
Okay. This is about a child missing school days. Is there any laws that could protect the parents? Iowa has a new rule about missing days.
Don't. Yeah. So here's the thing. Public school in America is requirement. It's a requirement, right? Thanks you guys for all the gifts. And thanks that the gifts match my outfit. Certainly, I can't make a child go to school. Kids get to a certain age, and I understand that happens with families, and that's a different conversation. But if you're not going to send your child to school, thanks you guys, then look into online school. So every state has free online school, if that's something, but you can't just keep your kiddo at home. So I think 3 legislative sessions ago here in Texas, we passed a legislation called seat time, means you need to have your seat in the seat. And additionally, I can't expect for the school-based members to implement the IEP with fidelity if my child's not there. And I understand there are extenuating circumstances, but a lot of times we just we don't make our kids go to school. That's part of parenting. It includes making them do stuff they don't want to do.
What is a resource room for students with an IEP?
It's for students that usually are a couple of years behind academically, maybe a little bit more. They can still do the grade level content, but it has to be modified or scaffolded. And so we're getting really those core pieces of that content area instead of the totality of the state standard. So let's say that Elena's teaching 7th grade history and she has to cover, 19 modules and this many things in those modules. If the student's in 7th grade history resource, then we do smaller pieces of that at a smaller pace. So resource changes the student's product, the learner expectation. So what they're going to produce is at a smaller amount.
Okay. This is a real question. West Virginia does not...
Blue Ridge Mountain. Oh, I'm sorry, John Denver. Do you guys remember John Denver? Elena does. You don't, Cindy. You're too little.
Wasn't that on an 8-track tape?
That was on an album, ma'am. Don't be clever. We won't put up with that. Yeah, it was on vinyl.
Oh, vinyl. Okay. West Virginia does not allow accommodations on state testing for a VI student. Help.
Well, you're in West Virginia. So, of course we allow accommodations on state tests. So, I would, Travis is in the comments. I'm sure he's throwing a fit now. So, we don't deny students with disabilities their accommodations. Every student in America, if they need them, could have an accommodation on the state test, whether they're a 504 or special education. We do some wonky stuff in West Virginia and Virginia around vision, which is really irritating for me. So, I would reach out to the state school for the blind and to the State Department of Education. A lot of times you hear stuff in a meeting from people that have zero knowledge about legalities and their onus, duty, and responsibilities as it relates to special education. I'm going to answer a question that keeps coming up in the chat. Somebody said, can you talk about school refusal? Yeah, I have kiddos that I serve that refuse to go to school, and I understand that. I don't want a single mom, arguing with the 13-year-old boy. And so we do all that we can to support those families. You might have in-home and parent training. You might ask for social work wraparound services. You might see if there's an agency that can help. But it occurs.
Certainly. We are new at school, and the SPED teacher is a bully to my child. What can I do to help my child?
So I would address that with the principal. I'm very concerned about your staff member being so aggressive with my student. Is there something you're going to do to rectify that?
My child's preschool teacher requested a meeting to go over intervention data. What is that?
So intervention data could be MTSS, SST, RTI, UPS, OPI. I'm just kidding. I just made up those last two things. So intervention data is when a teacher has intervened and tried to provide some more supports than she would a general ed student. And she's going to share with you whether the efficacy of that intervention.
My son's school tried to tell me that typing accommodation was only for OT. Is that right?
The typing accommodation is if that's what you need to make progress on your IEP goals. There are some kids that type faster than they write. So you don't have to have an OT to have a typing accommodation. I like somebody just put not. I like that. Not.
Okay, hold on. Are suspended students still supposed to get their direct instruction hours?
So it depends. Are they suspended or are they expelled? Right? So there's different things. So you can have in-school suspension. If you have in-school suspension, then we have to be in school providing them their special education. If they're suspended, we don't have to. If they're expelled, we don't have to. But you want to make really sure that you're sure what happened on that disciplinary form. And then I'm going to take 2 more questions, and then I will be ready for the 8, whatever it is I'm going to be ready for. I'll just be ready. I'll be spectacular at 8 p.m.
Okay. What are the proper steps to take for a student who is working on a kinder level in 5th grade?
Get him in the right setting. Nothing's more important than getting him in the right setting. The instruction doesn't matter if he's in the wrong setting.
Okay, hold on. Sorry, got some of the repeat questions here. My daughter has level 1 autism, and they didn't add it to her IEP, and then they dropped her IEP this March. What do I do?
So we program on disabilities based on the characteristics of disability. So I don't know the characteristics of your child's autism. I know often we use words like level 1, level 2, level 3. It's about how does that disability impact the student across settings. So if you believe that she still needs an IEP, and they dismissed her IEP because of testing, then I would ask for an outside evaluation, but certainly go back to the school and identify the areas of need and talk about the concerns that you're having for your student to be successful. Okay, so we're going to see you guys at the top of the hour. I did get my Chinese food. It's very exciting. Such a great husband. So remember, if you guys need anything, let us know. We have amazing trainings at Special Education Academy. Again, if you're wanting to join the Academy, now is the time, because October 1st, the price goes up. But the $47 you can lock in for forever. So everybody that is in now will be grandfathered at that price. So we meet every Tuesday. We teach on at least an hour of the federal law and open it up for all of your questions. We love you guys. Remember, when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody. We'll see you in the next training.